Hey folks, my name's Raven, and this is going to be the first video in a guide series I'm going to be completing for some of my favourite League champions. Today's will be on Ivern, Friend of the Forest. So why should you play Ivern in Season 11? Well, aside from his super unique playstyle, he's rarely ever banned. He's tons of fun and does a surprising amount of damage with the right build. Now obviously League is a game about balance, so he does have some cons to balance out, like the better things about him. This is stuff like, say, he's very team reliant and skill shot reliant. He's also quite easily invaded, but you can also quite easily invade because of your smite cheese, so it goes two ways. Overall, I'd say there's never been a better time to pick up Ivern due to the recent jungle changes, effectively just giving him a free buff. Anyway, let's keep it short and jump right into his abilities. So Ivern's passive is a really unique ability that means he can either be harmed by or harm a jungle creature. He farms instead by placing a grove at their feet, and over time it matures, until eventually he can release the jungle creatures, gaining the golden XP then. If he smites it immediately before it's matured, he gets the golden XP then, but obviously that costs him a smite. The second part of his ability allows him or his allies to drop the red and blue buff when they pick them up. So basically, as Ivern, when you have matured and then released the blue buff, it will drop a copy of it to the floor that any of your allies can pick up. It lasts 1 minute before disappearing, and if an ally kills your red buff or blue buff, it drops and only Ivern can pick it up. So you don't have to worry about your 0 and 15 bot laner stealing your red buff as Ivern. It's a pretty good perk. Ivern's Q is one of his two key abilities. It allows him to throw out a straight line projectile that when it hits an enemy, it will immediately root them, and then upon reactivation, or if you auto attack them, it will pull you and your allies towards them. It's a very simple ability but very powerful, and it's a skill shot, so requires practice to hit. So a potential tip for this skill would be that you can flash and then throw it out to cover more distance with it than the enemy would expect, because obviously you leap forward and then you throw it out, which you just saw me doing that clip with the Ari. I flashed and surprised her by closing more distance than she expected to hit the Q. You can also use it to get over walls, and whilst you're doing especially your first rotation of the jungle, you want to use it to clear quickly by jumping between camps and stuff. It's your mobility spell as well as your lockdown. So Ivern's W is a very simple but very powerful ability. You click W over your cursor will spawn a bush. It will grant you vision for 3 seconds where it has been placed, and because of this can be used to check for enemies around corners or over walls or in bushes in front of you. It will also, if you place it on yourself, grant you a small damage buff for a short amount of time. There's a couple of little tricks with it, like you can use it to block vision from a ward, an enemy ward, if you put it in front of it, or you can place them over a wall to check for enemies and then jump to them with your Q. But overall, it's a fairly simple yet powerful ability. Ivern Z is like his bread and butter ability. It is his damage, survival, and sustain ability, effectively. It will allow him to stay alive in a fight for an incredible amount of time, or keep an ally alive in a fight for an incredible amount of time. He can place a shield on himself, an ally, or Daisy, and after a short amount of time it explodes, dealing damage and slowing enemies in an AoE around it. It doesn't deal an insignificant amount of damage either. It's the ability you're always going to max first, and late game it gets stupidly powerful, being able to block things like a Vigor ultimate almost in its entirety, and having a 3-second cooldown. It's definitely, don't sleep on this ability. Ivern's R is a summon, and it's Daisy. So he summons Daisy, and then you can click R again multiple times, and depending on where you've got your cursor will affect what she does. If you've got your cursor on a point of just the map as normal, she'll move to that point. If you hover over yourself and click R after summoning her, she'll then be attached to you and just follow you. And if you do that to an enemy, she will just run at the enemy until she reaches her maximum distance from you. She will jump to your Q, you can stick your shield on her and it will blow up and apply the slow. After 3 consecutive hits of an enemy, she will do a knock up in a straight line. There's definitely some niche uses to her, like throwing her over a wall when you summon her, and sticking shields on her from behind the wall to try and deal some damage whilst protecting yourself and your teammates. And if you're stood at the back of something like Dragon or Rifty, you can get her to fight it while she's still on the other side of the wall safe. Yeah, pretty good ability. Not the strongest ultimate in the game by any means, but like definitely a fun one. So for the next section of the guide, we'll be covering stuff like level order, items, and runes. So to jump right into that quickly, the level order is extremely simple as Ivern. You will always go Q first, and then E, and then W. And then in terms of maxing order, you will always max E first, then Q, then W. And obviously you do R at 6, 11, and 16. So the Season 11 item changes have left Ivern in a weird spot. It's definitely a better spot, but it's a kind of a funny one, because depending on which champion you play, the jungle item changes were either a big buff or a big nerf. So somebody like say Lee Sin or Kha'Zix, who would almost rush their jungle item to get that early power spike, have been quite heavily nerfed by the fact that they remove them. But somebody like Ivern, who sometimes would not even build an empowered smite, has been buffed because now he just always gets either a blue or a red smite, which he didn't always get before. So he's actually in quite a good spot items wise. Some of the mythics and stuff work really well with him as well. So to run over it quite quickly, early game you will almost always go blue, but you can go red. You could go refillable or like a single health pot on a red ward, like that's up to you depending on the situation. I generally go refillable. The mythics, there's only 2 that work for him. Imperial's Mandate increases his damage because both his Q and his E have slows / roots. Moonstone Renewer gives him more support, heals his allies a bit, which basically is better in the situation that your entire team already has really high damage. So if you've got a really high damage team, go Moonstone Renewer. If you've got a team with average to low damage, definitely go Imperial Mandate. In terms of what you'll build on Ivern, build order wise, you always go your boots first. I generally would recommend boots of mobility. Boots of swiftness are more fun in my opinion because you just have constant speed, but boots of mobility are like the better choice. So your build orders, him will generally be your boots, whichever you choose, your mythic, and then generally Staff of Flowing Water into Ardent Censer, and then after Ardent Censer it can be a bit, it depends on your game, but I like to go Redemption so I can have a bit of healing to then buff up my allies and keep them alive even longer. But it really depends, because some games you go Ardent Censer first out of your legendary, some games you might rush Redemption. You might not go Redemption at all. Like, it's very context reliant, but like a fairly safe build order to follow is your boots into Imperial Mandate, into Staff of Flowing Water, into Ardent Censer, into Redemption, and then your final item depends on the game. If they have a very AD heavy team, going like Zhonya's, especially if they have like a Fed Z or something, getting Zhonya's is very, very good. A Fed AP hero, Banshee's Veil is very good, and if they have lots of CC, rushing a Quicksilver Sash is always great. I've already went over the boots, so that's the items. Right, so in Season 11 there are 2 viable trees, rune trees in my opinion for Ivern. You'll always go sorcery into Summonary, and then 99% of situations you will Nimbus Cloak for the mobility it grants him. If they've got a team of 5 AP heroes, feel free to go Nullifying Orb, but unless it's in like that very slim situation, always go Nimbus Cloak. Out of the second tree here, it would generally be either Transcendence or Celerity, depending on your playstyle. If you prefer more movement speed and to get around the map more often and to be able to gank and counter gank a lot, Celerity is better. If you want to scale, have better cooldowns, shield more often, Transcendence is better. And on the final tree of like your main runes, you'll either go Water Walking or Gathering Storm. I prefer Water Walking because I find it's more versatile, but I know if you have a scaling team, so like a Kayle, a Jhin, a Kassadin, that you want to scale up with, you would go Gathering Storm in that situation, because after like 20 or 30 minutes, Yeah, it's after about 20 minutes. Gathering Storm is then better than Water Walking, generally. But Water Walking is much more versatile and generally more reliable, so I would recommend that. In terms of your secondary tree, there are two options. The one I prefer is Inspiration, and obviously I would take on that Futures Market and Cosmic Insight. Futures Market lets you hit your items faster and more reliably, so even if you get killed slightly early somehow, or you just can't pull off a gank or something along those lines, you can still come back, borrow some money, get your items and get back out there. And Cosmic Insight is just a pretty great rune right now. On the minor runes with this tree, I'd probably take like Ability Haste and some armor just to give yourself a bit of survivability and some more cooldowns. The secondary tree option, I don't like very much, but I know quite a few people that do like it and do take it, is Domination, and they will run Relentless Hunter and either Zombie Ward or Eyeball Collection. With this, I've seen people run attack speed, so they're playing a much more aggressive version of Ivern. If you're gonna do this, I'd recommend probably going Gathering Storm for the reliable scaling with Zombie Ward and Eyeball Collection, because those are scaling runes, that's a scaling rune, they fit together quite well. But in general, I would avoid this tree because it's not exactly how Ivern's designed to best perform. He's definitely a supporty champion, so building around that and making that better will generally win you more games than trying to make him a more aggressive champion. So this final part of the guide is going to be explaining how I will start a game as Ivern. It will have some general tips for jungling as well, but like mainly Ivern. So as you can see, the first thing I will do at the start of the game is go down to the opposite side I plan on starting on to drop a ward. I do this so I know if they're going to invade me. As Ivern, you want to start on the side you want to end at. So if I want to end and gank top, I will start red buff. Because obviously you clear down and then you walk back up. So once I've dropped the ward, I will then go, I'll recall, swap for a red ward and oracle. I will then mark my red and my chickens, raptors, chickens, same thing. After that, I will take a very slow gander on down towards blue buff, which feels like it's much closer when you're playing the game. So I'll use Blast Plant to get over. I will smite blue buff because otherwise I won't have enough mana to continue. So I'll smite blue buff and then Gromp. I probably should have queued to Gromp there, but I didn't. I'll then mark Gromp and walk up and mark Wolves. Alright, I queued to Wolves instead. You should be queuing around your jungle to move quicker. I didn't do a very good job of that this game. But anyway, so then I will walk up from marking the bottom side of my jungle to grab raptors and then to grab red. And obviously after you've grabbed both raptors and red, you will be almost level 3. And that's when you'll look for a yank, because as Ivern you actually have one of the fastest early levels in the game. And obviously this game I cut it past it, but I didn't manage to get a gank off. There was no lane that was really amazing to gank. I tried to gank mid, it didn't really happen. So I went down and I grabbed Scuttle. You generally want to save a smite for Scuttle, because otherwise you won't get it. You need to save a smite for Scuttle as Ivern. But then after Scuttle, if there is still no gank opportunity, I will go grab Wolves and recall to get my first items. But anyway folks, that should be it. That is the guide over. It's probably not perfect. It's the first time I've tried anything like this, but if you have any questions, stick them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully you at least got something from this. Have a good night.